You're listening to KPFA 94.1. This is Education Today, and I'm your host, Kitty Kelly Epstein. There's a lot going on in education right now. Most of it is not reported in your local newspapers, and that's why you listen to KPFA. So KPFA on this, as on other issues, will let you find out what you can't find out many times anywhere else. Our first news is very local. We have a beloved guest host who comes on to Education Today to host in my place sometimes. Her name is Dr. Kimberly Mayfield, and she has become the Dean of the School of Education at St. Mary's College. This is a big deal for education because she's a magnificent educator, and she was previously the dean at Holy Names University, which prepared a very large portion of the teachers, particularly the African American and Latino teachers, who are now serving in the Oakland schools and other nearby districts. So, if you have friends or relatives who are thinking about getting paid to do something useful in the world, think about teaching and call St. Mary's College and ask for Dr. Kimberly Mayfield. One of the most important things to me about work is that I don't want to be bored. And if you feel like I do, I can promise you that teaching is one job that is never boring. It pays kind of decently compared to other comparable jobs, has good health benefits, and it's actually fun if you're into it. Of course, I know some people wouldn't be, but you might think about trying it out and going out to St. Mary's College, which I think now is the best program to be in. And it's often possible to work at a paid job in a school while you're earning your credentials. So you don't necessarily have to just, spend a year not getting paid doing student teaching. You can often get a job while you're working on that. So congratulations to Dr. Mayfield, and congratulations to all of us educators and parents who are going to benefit from the good quality training that she will be leading at St. Mary's. We'll be asking you, our callers, to make comments or questions a little bit later in the show. And here is the number, 1-800-958-9008. That's 1-800-958-9008. I'm going to report on some education news today, and then we'd be happy to have you call in and make comments or questions. Of course, we want you to remember to keep the comments friendly and relatively brief. So a second piece of news, parents in San Jose are in the midst of a struggle about school closings. The district decided to close 5 schools. The district says that the closings are not for financial reasons and they are not going to save money. And we now know from an international study or a national study that closing schools does not save money. We know this definitively now from across the country. And it's kind of logical that it doesn't save money because you still have the building there that has to be taken care of, and they don't lay off the staff. Those staff move to other schools, so there's nowhere to save any money, and in fact, it doesn't really save money. So it's not entirely clear why this is happening. Parents have been protesting for months. The closings affect 1,600 students. When the district proceeded with their plan, they made many promises about actions that they would take to help parents whose schools were being closed. The parents say now that these promises have not been kept. The parents also say that the closures have disproportionately affected Black and brown students. So what are they doing? Why are they doing it? The San Jose situation mirrors other cases of school closings, which are important to understand because school closings have become major across the country, and there's a new piece of research which makes them even more disturbing. Oakland, for example, closed 16 schools in the last 20 years, almost all of them disproportionately affecting schools with Black students. Many of these closures took place when Oakland was under state control. The horrific story of how Oakland got under state control is the subject of a whole nother show. But what it means is that Oakland had no elected representation during a large portion of the last 20 years. In the beginning of the state takeover, they eliminated the school board, appointed a trustee who was the one that Don Parada wanted. He was the guy who initiated and forced the takeover and forced a $100 million loan, which the district did not need and did not ask for. And the guy who was appointed as the state administrator, not elected by anybody, no control by people in Oakland, got to spend the $100 million however he wanted, or the first portion of it. So this kind of lack of representation happens only in districts that are not affluent and not white. And I could give you the long list. It's not actually that long, but it's Inglewood, Vallejo, Richmond, Compton, Oakland. You get the picture. It's districts that are Black and Latino and not affluent. There's not a single white district that has ever been taken over by the state. So those districts have not lost their representation, their right to vote, and all of these districts with Black and Latino populations have had that happen to them. It seems like it should be illegal. We supposedly have Democrats in power in California, and supposedly they should care about representation. But although me and a lot of other people have protested and written things, and it's still the case. So something you might want to ask representatives that you're thinking about voting for at the state level, do they support this process or not? Because it leads to many bad things, and school closings is one of them. The fact is now acknowledged everywhere that closing schools does not save money anywhere. The personnel are not laid off. They are moved to other schools. The school buildings continue to exist, and they have to be maintained. And often the district actually loses money because many of the students leave the district, and so the money the district would receive for educating them is lost. The disruption to families is often huge. If you close schools in less affluent neighborhoods, the children are going to have more problems getting to school in a distant location, for example. Their parents may not have cars to drive them and are likely to be fearful to have them take public transportation alone. So you can exacerbate the chronic absenteeism problem by closing schools and making it more difficult for the children to get to the school you're assigning them to. And schools serve a lot of other functions now. With the increase in poverty and homelessness for many children, school may be the only place they eat. So if they can't get there, they don't eat. One of the great things that has happened in Oakland this year, in my opinion, is that the school board has refused to close any more schools. You'll hear all kinds of nonsense in the right-wing mainstream press, but I think Oakland superintendent and board are at the moment doing a good job, given all the difficulties that there are with the federal government and the funding and so on. I'm not saying everything's great, but especially given all those difficulties, I think the fact that they have declared definitely that they will not go under state control again and they will not close schools, I think is a very good thing. One of the big parts of this story is a new study that was conducted by a professor at Stanford University. His name is Dr. Pierman. He looks at a combination of issues including race, school cultures, and gentrification. And one of his findings is a devastating testimony to the depth of racism in America. It's hard to hear. It's hard to absorb. It can make you feel kind of hopeless about white folks, of which I am one. But here is his finding. A school closure in a low-income Black community facilitates gentrification. But a school closure in a low-income community that has very few Black residents does not facilitate gentrification. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. We already know there's a lot of racism in America because if it weren't for white folks, we wouldn't have the current president that we have. So that's enough to convince us. But this finding about what it means to close a black school in facilitating gentrification is another huge manifestation. His summary statement is, school closures are, in fact, tightly coupled with patterns of gentrification, but only in black communities. And he asserts that a black school is what he calls a disamenity when it comes to gentrifying. As I said, we know how racist white folk are, but it still sickens my heart that in nice progressive places like Northern California, folks who look like me are still more likely to move to a neighborhood if it doesn't have a black school. According to Professor Pierman, the likelihood that a black school will be closed is 4 times as high as that a non-black school would be closed. 4 times as high. Think about that. And I want to say again in a few minutes that we're going to invite you to call in if you have comments about these issues that I'm bringing up or other things you want to say about education. Our number is 800-958-9008. And we will invite you to make comments. We have one caller already, but I'm going to say just a bit more about this issue before I call on you. So he notes that other disruptive urban changes are also most heavily bearing on black and brown communities, everything from urban renewal to where the freeway is located. JB, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Hi. Did you have a comment?
How are you doing? I did have a comment. I just, first of all, bear with me because I'm a little bit nervous, and I come from a population where there's 330 people. I'd like to tell people there's more cows than there are people here. And I'm a professional cowboy. I quit my job making $40 an hour when I was 20-something years old, and come up on a piece of property in a town called, small country town. And I train, now I've become, one of the best cowboys. I train horses.
Great.
I give beginner lessons and okay, my father's from Oakland, and he was drafted. He was a Dodge drafter, and Oakland sits really, the whole Bay Area sits really close near to my heart. And as I rode down here on the way to get my hay, I, thought that if St. Mary's were to have someone who were willing to initiate some sort of equine program that would incorporate beginner Western and English writing, black and brown and native indigenous history, if they had an instructor and someone who is an animal lover who owns his own animals, who's willing to incorporate and initiate that program, would you be willing to get me in touch with the correct people? I can haul the horses in and I can teach myself.
So I could mention this to my friend, the person I mentioned, Kimberly Mayfield. I could mention it to her. It's not the type of thing that they usually do at St. Mary's, but I could bring it up to her. And if you want to maybe call back and leave your number, I could let you know if she thinks there's any possibility they would be interested. Okay?
I really appreciate it.
Okay, and maybe I might have your number already right here. So that's okay.
Oh, okay. If you have my number, that would be great. And please let her know that I'm a member at a couple of local horsemen's associations. So the in-class lab work can be done in class, and they can have field days where they go and do hands-on things with the animals.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for the offer, and I will let her know that you called. Thank you, JB.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. So a bit more on, and our number, I think I said 1-800-958-9008. The other issue I've been talking about Professor Pierman from Stanford and the study that he's done which is looking at the relationship between race and school closures. And it's important because we now know that closing schools doesn't save any money. So since it doesn't save any money, why are people still closing schools? And he is arguing that it has to do with gentrification. And I think that it's an important issue, and particularly how that's related to racism in America. So a little bit more about that. So he also says that there are a lot of other urban changes that do also most heavily affect the Black and brown communities. So the other issues he raises is whether closing these schools may lead to students going to a, quote, better school where their education will be better, because maybe that's the argument. Maybe people, the kids get to go to a better school if their school closes. So maybe the test scores for those students will go up. Now, people who listen to this school on a regular basis will know I don't think much of U.S. test scores as a way to measure education. But if we do take test scores as a measure, the fact is that after closing schools in Black and brown communities, the racial test score gap widens. It does not result in those students having better test scores. In fact, the difference between how white students and non-white students do on tests gets worse. So no, school closures don't improve the educational measures of students whose schools were closed. Anthony, welcome to Education Today. How you doing?
Hey there. Yeah, this is Anthony. I'm calling in. Right now I'm in Vallejo. But, yeah, I wanted to agree with what you just said. I feel like, when you go to a new school as a student, because it happened to me, it can be very isolating and difficult to adapt, not to mention the time in between making that transfer to the school. But the question I wanted to have is, because I'm pretty concerned as I start to have my own family and watching my little brother grow up, how do we hold, our local schools accountable and make sure that, our kids are getting the education that they deserve, especially on the literacy front?
So that's a really important question. I have a few suggestions. One is if there's a particular school that you think your child is likely to be assigned to, or one that you want your child to go visit the school, ask to sit in a classroom, ask to see the kindergarten classroom, the first grade classroom, see how the teachers operate, what the school is like. If you don't feel comfortable with that school, then, make some argument with the district about why your child should go to a different school. That's one thing. And then the other thing is to be organized with other parents. So get to know the parents in the school and take the time to have some meetings, not just the regular PTA meetings, because those are often, the PTA may be great. I don't know. It's different in different schools, but sometimes it's just kind of the principal reporting on different things. But you need to be organized with the other parents so that you can ask questions about what's being taught. For example, we find that kids in the U.S. now are not doing enough reading, like reading real books. And so that would be a question to ask. Where are the books? When do the kids read? Do they have a chance to read? And what kind of approach do the teachers take? I'm into something which is called positive education, and you can imagine what that means. That means you're positive with kids. You find out what their strengths are, and you praise them for their strengths instead of talking about their weaknesses all the time. So those are the kind of things I would be looking for as a parent, and I'd encourage you to check out the schools early. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for calling in. So a bit more so we've been talking about school closures, and just a bit more about the reasons why school closures have a negative impact on communities. So one of the reasons is that they essentially affect almost entirely Black and brown students with a negative impact. And moving kids is difficult for their families if they have to change schools, and it doesn't do anything positive for the student whose school has closed and who has to move to a different school. So he has a lot of evidence against, again, the professor's name is Pearman, Pearman. I actually have an article about him on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, Kitty Kelly Epstein. So you could read more about the kinds of things I'm reporting on today. Finally, he notes that schools are not just important for the people who attend them now, but also for those who were students in the past. They are a part of a community's legacy, the place that people went for football games and prom and knew particular teachers and remember their own development and their own activities. And the magnificent and effective fight that people have put up to maintain McClymonds High School in Oakland is just one example. The Alumni Association there consists of people who went to school there 50 years ago. I know a number of the people who are involved in that fight, and they have continued to fight to keep McClymonds open, even though many, many times various school board members and superintendents have proposed closing the school. That's been a very, very important fight, and one that I think is worth putting up. So if you get the impression somehow from somebody, school board members or whoever, that closing schools is a good idea, I would tend to disagree, and I would really encourage you to look into the question of which schools are getting closed, who's the student population, why is it always black schools that are being closed, what is it that makes people make that choice. And my own opinion and experience from watching this process in Oakland is that it's the desire for gentrification by developers whose interests are being pursued by people like Don Parada, who was the senator who first forced Oakland under state control. And the whole issue of state control is an important one also. Again, our number, if you want to call in, is 1-800-958-9008. In other news, students in California are having to give up their phones for the school day. This is a rule I completely support, and from what I hear thus far from teachers, it's not actually as big a struggle as many expected. People thought that students would protest, they wouldn't be willing to give up their phones, that their parents would object because they want to reach their child. And it's only started statewide in the last couple of days, so we don't know exactly what will happen or how people will respond to it. But one school whose teachers I talk with regularly says that very few students have resisted. And in some cases, students have acknowledged that they know they are learning more if they don't have their phones. Because if you have the phone in your pocket and it rings, you're going to take it out. If somebody else texts you, you're going to get on your phone and see what they had to say. And so the students themselves who, kids actually do want to learn in school. I know sometimes we think they don't, but they actually do, and they actually do know they need an education. So they are saying themselves that it actually is a good rule. So we'll see further how that works out over the next few days and weeks, but that seems to be working out okay. Some have feared that parents would also resist, but a lot of parents realize that they can reach their kids by just calling the office. You don't really have to reach your kid in his classroom. You just call the office and they can get your kid if it's an emergency. So there's less protest on the part of parents also. In some related news, Some other countries are also reducing the use of other sorts of technology. Sweden, Finland, and some other European countries are returning to notebooks and reading real books. Ken, we have on the line. Welcome to Education Today.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure.
And I enjoy your program very much. I do listen to it regularly.
Thank you.
And I'm no education expert, but I do watch a lot of programs on public television and listen to radio programs about kids. And I live in a neighborhood where there's 2 elementary schools and a high school. So I know a little bit about some of the issues, but I'm curious. You were talking earlier about kind of following the interest of your child to find a school that's appropriate for them, and a lot of times that involves more travel. And I was wondering, and this may sound a little strange, but the reason they wanted to take their kid to a crosstown school was to get into more of an arts program.
Yes.
And why can't all our schools have good art programs, so everybody gets the basics, and we could have the teachers that have expertise in those fields come to various schools periodically within the school district and teach their specialty. And I think that would be more equitable for everybody. Every child could see how, especially a teacher that's really enthusiastic about a particular subject really does change your whole attitude about education.
So
and
I think
that
that's
might spark somebody.
I
Yeah.
think that's a really good idea, and there did used to be more of that in schools where an art teacher or a music teacher went from school to school. In fact, I've taught teachers who were music and art teachers who went from school to school. So I think it's a really good idea, and people should talk with the district about whether they are using that kind of model or could use that sort of model. And I think you're right about that. And, of course, the other issue is that we don't spend enough money on education. And I know it seems like we spend a lot, but the fact is that the fact that half our national budget goes to weapons causes us to spend less money. So there are other countries that do more of the kinds of things that you're talking about. Because they spend most of their budget. They don't have a huge arms budget. So that's one of the problems we have in the United States.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. And I do have another comment.
Real quickly, we only have a few more seconds.
Quickly. Yeah, I've noticed all the schools are starting to get fenced, trying to keep the public out of the yards and things, which is sad. And the other thing is that we've rehabilitated all our schools, yet there is no community access to classrooms to do community events or activities or just to meet. So I'm wondering what's pushing this trend, and do you have any thoughts along that line?
Yes, I think you should complain to the school district, and I also think you should find out who's running for school board and raise the issue with them. Most districts have school board elections, and the school board members should listen to you. So find out who's running and bring up these issues, and because I certainly think the school should be open to the community. Sometimes it costs money, but again, that's money well worth spending to me as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much for your call. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Thank you to our engineer, Rod Akil, and the rest of the KPFA staff. You've been listening to Education Today, and we'll be with you again next week at 2:30 on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Algorithms promote whatever keeps you scrolling. Corporations fund whatever protects the bottom line. KPFA answers to something different. The people listening. When you become a monthly guardian, you help build a dependable foundation for independent news, cultural programming, radical conversations, and music selected by people who actually care about what you hear. Make a difference today. Champion independent radio right now. Stand with KPFA at this very moment by becoming a monthly guardian at kpfa.org.
This is the mighty 94.1 KPFA, 89.3 KPFB in Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno, and online at kpfa.org.
94.1